Hi guys, today I want to continue discussing UFOs, which appears to possess incredible technology and can make maneuvers far beyond the capacity of our most advanced aircrafts. Civilians, military pilots, and personnel all over the world have reported many sightings. Not too long ago, the Pentagon released a group of footages from the US Navy. They also renamed their long-running UFO office and expanded their research mission. UFOs are no longer a fringe conspiracy, but a serious topic. However, the biggest challenge of studying UFOs is that there is no physical evidence, at least not to the general public. To further my research here, I want to find something tangible to be used as a potential evidence. Bob Lazar is the famous whistleblower who in 1989 lifted the curtain on Area 51 S4 and flying saucers. I have watched his original interviews from years ago and a recent one with Joe Rogan. I find him credible as his story remains unchanged in 30 years. He has not tried to market his story. Instead, he stayed out of the public eye for decades. I think he has neither ulterior motives nor monetary gains behind his whistleblowing. That's Bob Lazar's accounts on a flying saucer that he closely witnessed, touched, and worked on may be the only available detailed information to study UFOs. And that's what I'm going to discuss now. I read his book, The Dreamland, an autobiography, and pulled out some key points. The flying saucer Bob Lazar worked on was nicknamed the Sport Model, which was very different from our spaceships and aircrafts. Besides the saucer shape, it has no wires inside. Bob was hired to investigate the reactor. The small reactor was comprised of three parts: the housing, the tower, and fuel. The housing was a half sphere, about the size of a basketball, which acts sort of like a lid or shell on the side on a plate. Under the removable shell is the tower, which is about 6 inches tall with a cap. The fuel is a small triangle-shaped disc that slots into the tower. This fuel was claimed to be the mystery material element 115. It was tested that even without the fuel being present, the tower and the shell produced a relatively intense field of radiation within it, acting like a mini particle accelerator. Then we have the 3-cylinder emitters, in the shape and size of a household garbage can. The reactor and the emitters are not connected, but they can be turned on by placing the two items in proximity to one another, wherein they produce an astounding amount of power with supreme efficiency. The saucer was powered by some non-touch and no-wire energy. When the system of the reactor and the emitter was turned on, they generated a field that repulsed incoming objects. For example, it pushed Bob's hand away from getting close and deflected a golf ball Bob's labmate buried through at the field. It also stopped a watch and a bent light. Even though this field was strong, it made no noise and generated no heat. It was super efficient and produced no visible waste. The only thing Bob noticed different is the slight visual distortion. Quote, much like the thermal heat waves that rise up off a heated surface like a roadway in the summer. A desert mirage is an even better example. Unquote. Bob and Barry thought the apparatus produced a gravitational field, a force field, and antigravity, which could bend space, light, and distort time. The machine is so simple and elegant, with no moving pieces, and presented serious alien technology beyond our comprehension. My thoughts on this bizarre energy generator that is non-touch, has no wire, no motor, no moving parts, produces no sound or heat, is that it could be a magnetic force. Magnets can react with each other when they are placed close enough without touching and there are no wires. Levitating magnets also share a comparable movement with flying saucers with seemingly spontaneous small-range wobble. Magnetic forces are silent, powerful, don't generate friction-induced heat, and can function without moving parts. The best-known example would be the high-speed maglev magnetic levitation trains primarily researched in Japan and Germany. These maglev trains are floating, non-contact vehicles that utilize electromagnetic attraction and repulsion. The system can generate magnetic fields up to 10 times stronger than ordinary electromagnets, enough to suspend and propel a train. They offer safe travel at very high speeds of 406 km per hour, which is 250 to 373 miles per hour. Instead of a traditional motor, maglev trains use linear motors with no moving parts. These trains are quite powerful and efficient, so much so that NASA has been developing a launch aid using a similar magnetic levitation system to propel a spaceship. By the way, electricity and magnetism are essentially two aspects of the same thing, because a changing electric field creates a magnetic field, and a changing magnetic field creates an electric field. Electromagnetic propulsion is the principle of accelerating an object by using the flowing electrical current and magnetic fields. The electrical current is used to create an opposing magnetic field to repel. Now, my question is this. What if the assumed antigravity force formed by the UFO reactor and emitter was actually an electromagnetic field? That would be much easier to establish than an artificial gravitational field, which usually involves massive scales of matter like stars and planets. On the other hand, the electromagnetic field is readily achievable, like the maglev trains have their own fields. But can an electromagnetic field explain the startling phenomenon observed by Bob and Barry, which convinced them the alien device created a gravitational force? Let's explore this. First, the repulsion force generated by the reactor and emitter. Many objects, humans and animals, are all diamagnetic and would have been repelled by a strong electromagnetic field, similar to what happened when Barry threw the golf ball at the field and the ball was repelled as he shot up to the ceiling. There are many studies on diamagnetic levitation, and researchers have successfully levitated small animals like a frog and a mouse. This is a kind of a passive stable levitation that can be achieved at normal temperatures with no energy input. When Bob reached his hand towards the reactor, within 8 or 9 inches, he felt himself being pushed back by some unseen force. That may have been the magnetic force pushing him away, since humans are diamagnetic. Electromagnetism can also affect a watch's inner work and makes it stop. As for the light bending, I think perhaps the light was not bent by gravity, but caused by refraction. Light travels in a straight line through a uniformed medium, though it will refract when traveling through a non-uniform medium, such as the famous broken pencil in water illusion. This is how mirages form as well. Inferior mirages can be seen near hot summer roads, when the air close to land is hotter and less dense, while the air higher up is cooler with higher density. Superior mirages are the other way around, and the light bends downwards towards colder region, which can even result in a cool optical illusion of floating ships called fata morgana. Although a magnetic field does not affect the protons of light directly, a magnet can distort the medium through which light passes and thereby bend the light rays. Bob Lazar indeed sees thermal haze and a mirage-like visual distortion in between the devices. That could be a sign of the strong magnetic field changing the air density, which could have also caused the light refraction inside the emitters where the light bending was observed. In our world, almost all machines are powered by motors, wires, and electricity. Thus, it's very unusual for us to see a wireless power generator with a simple half-sphere reactor and a cylinder emitter. In a traditional electric motor, the rotor spins inside the stator. This generates unwanted heat, friction, and noise. There is also mechanical limits, plus wear and tear. The friction, resistive, and induction loss makes our motors inefficient. Most of their maximum efficiency is near 75% of rated load. But by utilizing electromagnetic propulsion with no moving parts, we might be able to create silent and reliable aircrafts. Such crafts would have much better efficiency than those of current chemical rockets that burn fuel to attain propulsion through the intermediate use of heat, which results in low efficiencies and large amounts of exhaust. All of these benefits are approaching the characteristics of the flying saucer described by Bob Lazar. Electromagnetic propulsion for space travel sounds really promising, but it's actually very difficult to achieve. Although 60-plus years have passed since the first research involving these kinds of thrusters, today such systems are still not ready to be launched in space, as they lack a suitable compact power source offering enough energy density to feed the power-greedy electromagnets. Studies remain largely theoretical, and experiments are still conducted in the laboratory. Speaking of compact power source, a major problem with old traditional rocket propulsion methods is that the spacecraft would have to carry its fuel with it, thus making it massive. At liftoff, the two solid rocket boosters consume 11,000 pounds of fuel per second. Sending NASA's space shuttle into orbit required more than 3.5 million pounds or 1,750 tons of fuel. That's astronomical. In contrast, Bob Lazar's small flying saucer is only 50 feet or 15 meters in diameter and 20 feet or 6 meters tall. This saucer can travel with insane speed, powered by a small triangle-shaped disc, which is half the size of a dollar bill. This is extraordinary. The alien solid fuel is tiny, but it's exceptionally powerful and presumably long-lasting. What kind of fuel could that be? I can only think of nuclear energy to fit into this profile. Bob Lazar said the fuel disk was made from a single super-heavy element, element 115. For elements lighter than iron on the periodic table, nuclear fusion releases energy. Conversely, heavy elements like uranium release energy when converted to lighter nuclei through alpha decay and nuclear fission. To use a super-heavy element as a practical fuel, to my knowledge, nuclear fission would be the way to go. Here's a photo of what nuclear fuel looks like before it's used. Not too different from the triangle disk Bob described it, right? Fission reactors are the most common type of nuclear reactor nowadays. Some fission devices use radioactive decay or particle accelerators to trigger fissions. Remember that Bob and Barry tested the radiation level of the flying saucer's reactor. Even without the fuel disk, within the half-sphere, the tower was still being bombarded by particles, acting like a particle accelerator. Maybe this is how the saucer was powered, a compact nuclear fission reactor. The tower works as a particle accelerator to induce fission reactions of the fuel disk, and the shell is a radiation protective shield. Even though Bob stated that they determined there was no nuclear reaction and there were no fission or fusion products left over from a reaction, reflect on how elementary we are comparing to the technological level of the flying saucer creators. I wonder if the lack of waste products is because the alien nuclear reaction was extremely efficient and left no radioactive harmful waste. Bob said himself that there was shockingly no waste energy during the reaction. Whoever built the flying saucer must have otherworldly and much superior technologies, since they seem to be able to convert nuclear energy directly into electricity. While our most effective way of getting energy out of large nuclear reactors is to use the heat coming from fission reactions to make steam that spins a turbine to create electricity. This is not that efficient, and during this process, substantial energy is wasted. About the controversial element 115, although we don't have a stable isotope yet, scientists do think that element 115 is special because it is near a predicted island of stability where some super-heavy nuclei might have much longer lifetimes. Instead of living for less than a second, they could exist for minutes, days, or even years. That's long enough that we might be able to use them for practical applications. Therefore, it's conceivable that a stable isotope of element 115 exists and could act as a nuclear fuel. Moreover, I consider that a reactor might work as a combination of a nuclear fission reactor and an atomic battery, which operates depending on the energy level needed for different kinds of space-traveling gears. An atomic battery uses energy from the decay of a radioactive isotope to generate electricity. It has an extremely long life and a high energy density. Earlier this year, a group of scientists was reported to have developed a method to turn nuclear waste to atomic batteries that last 1,000 years, all the while charging themselves. If this is the case with the flying saucer reactor, then when the saucer is in the high acceleration mode, it would use the fission gear. And when it's hovering, the battery low performance gear would be sufficient. We learned earlier when the emitters were moved within certain distance to the reactor, the system would be turned on and create a strong magnetic field able to propel an incoming golf ball. As a result, I propose Bob's flying saucer functions as follows. The moving and rotating one or more emitters can activate the particle accelerator through electromagnetism, like how one starts a car's engine. When the superheavy element 115, the nuclear fuel, gets bombarded by accelerated particles, a fission reaction is triggered and emits radiation. This radiation will be efficiently converted to electricity before it degrades to heat. The flowing electrical current and magnetic fields induce strong electromagnetic propulsion to propel and fly the craft. I suspect the control of the emitters would be similar to the different gears in cars, but the saucer gears are finely adjustable. Different gear modes are associated with the emitters' positions, and thus controlling the energy level being produced by the reactor. Depending on the pilot's intentions, the saucer can use its electromagnetic force to hover motionless in the air, fly leisurely, making sharp turns, or accelerating to unthinkable speeds. On another note, the saucer shape very likely relates to the energy creation, conversion, and distribution in order to maximize the overall efficiency. In his book, Bob talked about his initial interest on the emitters, but since their assignment was to strictly focus on the reactor, they didn't spend much time on studying the emitters. That's a real pity, because even though the reactor generates energy, the craft system seems to function mainly through the three emitters, or amplifiers. They were the ones with coronal discharge of the ionized air during flying. Their turning angles or positions would activate the reactor and possibly create different propulsion directions and forces. I would love to know if there's more information about these so-called emitters so I can dig a little deeper. Any thoughts or feedback on my hypothesis is more than welcome. I'm no physicist, and this is merely me conjecturing. I look forward to reading your comments. If you like my video, please subscribe to my channel and share with others. You can also support me on Patreon, which is a monthly charge, kind of like you buying me a cup of coffee once a month. I appreciate your support. This is Curious Being. I'm Tina. Thanks for watching and see you next time.